Welcome to the latest edition of the CORE podcast series. Today we have breaking news on the EPCOR condemnation, and we also have a troubling report about the Town of Edgewood's willing and intentional efforts to conceal the town's recent applications to get funding to finance this boondoggle of an infrastructure project, at least in our opinion. Two of the town councilors have been repeatedly asking for an update on the EPCOR condemnation. The mayor says there's nothing to report. The mayor says he can't explain why the town spent over $22,000 just in May on lawyers to support this condemnation, and the mayor refuses to disclose what the attorneys are working on. We have important information about new activity by the Town of Edgewood to proceed with the EPCOR condemnation despite the overwhelming lack of public support.
Right, and we've been informing the public for a long time now that after the 2018 public hearing that happened on the EPCOR matter, people came out in droves against this, didn't want it, that the town went underground. They started holding meetings about EPCOR in private session or closed session so the public wasn't aware of what was happening. We've been asking repeatedly for public hearings. We never got those public hearings. Well, now we found out that it's worse than that kind of activity. They're hiding documents even from the councilors.
You don't say.
Yeah. So at the last regular council meeting, we'll play a clip here. You can see that Juan Torres is being asked by Sherry Abraham, "What's happening with? Are you soliciting funds for EPCOR for the takeover? What's happening with all that?" And he tells her that they haven't made any applications, and kind of sloughs it off. So let's play that clip.
Council never gave approval to seek funding for this. Can you confirm or deny that Carla is seeking funding?
I don't know that we're seeking any funding at this time.
Are any of those bills to Bohannon Houston or the attorneys in the activities of searching out funding?
Mayor Council, there has been no bill charged to the Town of Edgewood to seek out funding from any organization, period.
And are you seeking funding?
We are not seeking funding. We are simply seeing what would it take to seek funding. Any action to seek funding has to be approved and has to be done by the governing body.
So here's the thing. After that happened, I sent an IPRA, an information request, which is the equivalent of the Freedom of Information Act. Government has to produce that. I've sent them to the town. They don't produce them. But we went ahead and sent them off to the financing agencies that we know of that might be funding these kind of projects. And we got reams of documents that are absolutely current. They're having meetings. They're talking about meetings to do the funding. They're talking about whether they can fund a hostile takeover or a condemnation action, which you can't do using federal funds. They're trying to get around it different ways. So there's all this discussion. Here's another one. Councilor Abraham tried to get some documents from the deputy clerk, Carla Salazar, and she sent information, a request, which is a legal request. Councilors shouldn't have to do that.
No.
They should just ask them and have them sent over. So here is the response. Dear Councilor Abraham, I want to be absolutely clear and state emphatically that I have not made any request for money from any funding agency to take over EPCOR. So therefore, I have no correspondence that would be applicable to your request. Well,
And what's the date of that?
this date is June 11th. So after that, then she submitted official legal IPRA on it, got a bunch of documents from the town. I guess they finally decided they had to turn them over. But we got all these documents from all of the likely sources. They're talking to the Federal Environmental Protection Agency requesting funding. They're talking to the New Mexico Environment Department requesting funding. They're talking to the New Mexico Finance Authority, which is the big kahuna, so to speak, of financing agencies for municipalities with water systems or not. So for infrastructure. So they're actually coming out, and this is like a bald-faced lie. There's no other way to say it. I can't say it nicely. That's what this is. And so now there's this kind of conspiracy going on to operate in secret and to keep this. That's how far they will go. And that's why it occurs to me that the mayor is so determined that he's actually got his staff now schooled in how to hide things from not only the public, but from the very counselors that want to reestablish openness in their government.
Well, what's equally troubling is that we knew that this response from the deputy town clerk was not accurate the moment it came across the wire.
Yeah.
Because members of CORE had requested public records from the town back in 2019, and at that time, the town had disclosed certain emails that they were trying to request funding from the USDA Rural Development Program.
Right, and they got shot down on that one, but they're trying every other avenue that they can. So you don't just spend all this time and effort and energy. They've hired a consultant out of Albuquerque that they have to be paying. Consultants don't work for free. And they're operating, trying actively to get this. And they're talking about funding possibly as soon as August. They were talking about we could get on the funding list for August. They have $14.5 million. So it's imminent what they're trying to do here. And I can see now why the mayor wanted to push the special election off, why they fought it so hard. Because it would have been over. They could have had this thing done by November. So now we're going to have the special election in August, and that throws a wrench in their plans. So here's the thing. Why do we want to throw a wrench in their plans? It's not necessarily that. It's that this is a horrible thing for the town to take over a water system that's functioning perfectly, that keeps up with our growth, that provides us with everything we need at reasonable prices, when there's absolutely no reason to use a taking of private property, which is an extreme act in itself. But there is one thing that's consistent with this, is that the mayor took our town money, ran the sewer onto his property, changed the zoning laws to favor industrial development on his property. And now he's lacking one thing. You need zoning approval, which he's now got. You need sewer so that you can have commercial and industrial. And you need adequate commercial water service, which is different than residential. You have to have fire flow protection. So that means bigger pipes that have to be run under the highway, that have to go to the storage tanks where all the water is stored and comes from, in order to, in the case there was a big fire. There's nothing wrong with having fire protection, but there's a lot wrong with running it, infrastructure, onto your property with town money. This is not going to stop unless we do something, and what we can do is vote for the special election, because what we're voting for is the right to cancel his actions if he goes extreme. We don't have to do anything if he listens to reason, but that hasn't happened so far. And in most towns, you have a voice simply by talking to your representatives. You don't in this town. What you have is you get shut down in public meetings, you get bullied. We've been called out, and we've been called all kinds of names in the paper. They were accused of working for EPCOR, which we have no relationship whatsoever. But if somebody thinks it's a bad idea, just because they're EPCOR doesn't make them wrong. It is a bad idea. And we know it's a bad idea, and EPCOR doesn't want their property taken, I guess, either, but they know it's a bad idea for the town as well. So the mayor has resisted this election. He said, I called the deputy assistant up there at the clerk's office and asked them, what is this going to cost the town? And they said it's going to cost about $2 a voter, or about $8,000. They handle the printing, they handle the mailing, all of that's about $8,000.
And as we've noted before, that's a cheap price for democracy.
It's very cheap to have a voice. So the mayor has come out and said he's already spent $30,000 resisting this. So he resisted this. He wouldn't do what he had to do to call for the election. And then the other two counselors, Abrahams and Jaramillo, had to go to a judge and get him to order it. So he resisted that using town money, paying the town attorneys. Spent $30,000 when it would have just taken $8 to do this election.
And he suggested that lawsuit was unnecessary.
Well, he tried to say that, but he wouldn't even return their phone calls. They kept saying, are you going to do the right thing? The Secretary of State says we have to, and he wouldn't even return their phone calls.
And time was of the essence, because this special election resolution had to make it to the county clerk by the first week of June.
And it's more timely than we even knew, because they're working diligently to try to get this funding through so they can make this EPCOR thing happen.
Well, the town has demonstrated a practice of concealing information, refusing to make disclosures, particularly to our elected officials who are on the town council, and that's troubling in and of itself. But we're also beginning to see a pattern of deception in some of the town's activities, and some of that deception was referenced in the documents that you were able to obtain from the New Mexico Finance Authority
Right.
with respect to the fact that for the town to qualify for certain funding sources, the utility company, in this case EPCOR, has to be a willing seller. What information do we find in these documents?
In the documents, they're saying that they have been told by Edgewood that EPCOR is actually a willing seller, but for some reason they want them to go through the condemnation process anyway. Nobody in their right mind would want to go through the kind of 2-year lawsuit that it is. And we checked with EPCOR. We called them and said, is this true? Are you guys now willing to sell? And if not, why don't you just negotiate with them instead of going through the condemnation? They said, absolutely not. We've never said that. We've been clear from day one, and they have. They came out publicly in the forums and lots of different ways saying they don't want to sell.
Unbelievable. And I think what folks need to know who are tuning into this episode is that if you think EPCOR is a dead issue, you are dead wrong, because this is actually moving full steam ahead. The town has been spending tens of thousands of dollars over the last couple of months in legal fees to pursue this matter.
Right.
Nobody knows what the lawyers are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition to that, the town met with some officials from the Finance Authority as recently as Friday, June 18th.
Yeah, that's right. They talk about this meeting that they had and what they discussed. So it's all happening, but it's happening in the back room, in the dark, under the table. And that's the real problem here. We've been talking about open government for a long time, and that's what we want to restore, because that way people know what's happening, they can weigh in, they have a voice. This mayor is driving this agenda and taking extreme measures to hide it. So you got to ask yourself, if they have nothing to hide, if they're not afraid of the people, if we like it, if we're going to like what they're doing, if they have nothing to hide, why are they hiding it?
I don't know, but if the town is meeting with the New Mexico Finance Authority, it's my position that all of our elected officials should know about it, and we know for a fact that is not the case.
Right.
So we'd encourage you to stay tuned. We will continue bringing you information as it develops because, like I said, this is breaking news, extraordinarily important, extraordinarily expensive, and as we've noted in several other presentations, I don't think you're getting a bang for your buck.
And I think we can see, people were real upset when they realized the mayor spent all of our town money building that sewer onto his property for his benefit. And this is not going to change. This shows that it's only going to get worse. If we don't vote for the commission manager government, we're not going to have any way to counter any of this. If we do vote for the commission manager government, we can stop and cancel any of these egregious acts that he's doing. If they vote to take over EPCOR, if they vote to run phase 2 of the sewer, which he's planning, it's all designed and the engineering stuff, and they were putting it on the request list for money as the second priority after the first sewer. So if they vote for any of that stuff under the commission manager form, we can nullify those votes with a public referendum. As it is, if we don't vote for it, we don't have any recourse. We can complain, but you know what they do when we complain. They bully us, they want us to shut up, they try to drown us out. So.
And we've described these as superpowers. These superpowers being the right of recall, to call back these elected officials if they won't listen to the will of the people, the right of referendum, to rescind actions taken by the town that the public does not agree with, and initiative, to force the town to take action when they refuse to do so.
Yeah, and you shouldn't have to force the town, but in this instance, if the mayor and the council, his rubber stamp counselors, I call them, really were serving the people, they were there to serve the people and do the will of the people, all of this would be out in the open, because they wouldn't be afraid of criticism. They would want it. They would say, well, what do you want? What's your vision of this town? What do you want to see happen here? As it is, they're hiding all this stuff, which I think speaks for itself.
Well, if you want to talk about irony and cognitive dissonance, it's very interesting that the town is willing to proceed with an extraordinarily expensive hostile takeover of the EPCOR water system with essentially zero information presented to the town council or to the public. But when it comes to a public-private partnership with EPCOR to improve the water quality, which appears to be one of the issues that people are most concerned with, Councilor John Abrams says, I can't even begin to consider that notion unless I have a lot more information.
Well, he never has enough information. I've heard that from him. Whenever he doesn't want to take an action, that's what he'll say. you know, if I don't have enough information or you don't, we go get it. And then we can make an informed decision.
And that's not what's happening with our town council today.
No, it's not. Oh, I just want to remind everybody that you're going to be getting your mail-in ballots. They're going to come in your mailbox in the first week of August. And it's important to have a voice, let your voice be heard by voting, mail them back, and let your voice be heard.
Well, we will keep you updated. This is Adrian Terry and Jerry Powers bringing you another piece of important local information on behalf of citizens for an open and responsible Edgewood. Thanks for watching and stay tuned.